Welcome to a football show. Nick Suss of the Tennessee and Braden Gall, brought to you by Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Good morning, Nick. How are you, sir?
Good morning. Good morning. I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing well. A couple of notes here. We are not technically live this morning. We recorded it earlier on Thursday morning. So we apologize to all you great commenters who normally hang out with us. We love you guys. We apologize. I have to be at the mayor's speech this morning, Nick. So, and then of course we also did not know that they were going to schedule Brian Callahan and some players that are available on Thursday afternoon. So Kaharski's going to have a breakdown. Suss at the Tennessean's going to have a breakdown. And we'll, of course, cover it. The Hot Read podcast on Friday is going to have a breakdown. And then PK and I will come back Monday and cover it on the football show as well. So just want to point those things out real fast. So we do apologize about some of that stuff. But we are here to talk about the AFC South. I'd like to know, Nick, looking at the draft for the Texans, the Colts, as he yawns at me.
It's very early.
the Texans, the Colts, and the Jaguars. I'd like to know, like, what is the one thing everyone needs to know about those draft classes? Did you pick out a strategy? Did you pick out a coherent thought? Looking at you, Jacksonville, as it pertains to the list of players that are there. I think the Texans had a very clear strategy. I don't know about the Colts or the Jags. We'll see. And of course, we'll break down the Titans class that you and I have not talked fully about as a group yet.
Yeah.
We talked about Cam on Friday morning, but we're back again. First of all, thank you, as I said on Monday. And I want to make sure I say to you personally and on the air, which is thank you so much for showing up on Saturday night and coming out and having a good time. I think you were the one seed of entertainment value on at this gathering, brought to you by Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. We raised over $3,000 for our kids this draft, which is a new record. We've gone up every single year, and it's because of you, the audience, showing up and being awesome, and folks like you, Nick, who have been supportive of that event. And it's been a great time. It was a great weekend. I had too much fun. I think Saturday night, I paid for it dearly on Sunday because I am old now. So thank you, Sinkers Beverages, for making me feel old on Sunday. Shotgun Willie's Barbecue did its best to help me not feel old. But.
And I will take the compliment about being the number one seed, but I will also say I did my best to not have the fun. I took one sip of one whiskey and looked at it and said, not doing this. It's not going to be good for me. And I didn't do the rest of the drinking. So that was purely me. That was unfiltered Nick personality that you guys were. It was great to meet all of you guys who I met out there. That was a lot of fun. That was really entertaining.
It was a lot of insight, a lot of fun. And I do think there's a happy medium between your strategy and mine. Because there was 5 flights of bourbon, and like a little sip of each one would be a really cool experience. I unfortunately drank all of them, and you drank none of them, so there probably needs to be a happy medium in there. And I just don't do that much anymore. So I felt it on Sunday, that is for sure. I was worthless. Sorry, honey and kids.
But we were also, those of us who had spent the last 3 days in the Titans draft room, we were working on like 4 hours of sleep a night and had only eaten things that don't sponsor the show, but good local eateries and also non-local eateries that aren't as good, and had only just
those frozen patties of chicken rolling right off the truck.
Yeah,
all right.
We were not in the mood to layer the stomach.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay. All right. So I do want to talk Titans here first. And again, special thanks to Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. This is the whole point of I'm not trying to be like super philosophical about all this, but the whole point of launching the company was to make something for, of, and by Nashville, and to have a bunch of local businesses who are run here that are award-winning and very, very good at their jobs and what they do sponsor a program like this that comes together with you, the audience, at a place like that does good work for kids in the community for an organization is sort of the whole point of all of this. So thank you to Paul and to Nick and to Cav and to Easton and to JT and to Stoney and to all the audience that came out. It was a lot of fun, and I do appreciate it. So just wanted to get that out of the way to your face, because I know I said all that on Monday to Paul, but I wanted to make sure you heard me as well. So, okay. I want to talk, and I asked Paul a lot of this stuff on Monday, and so you kind of have all my feelings on this, but I want to ask you, do you think the Titans followed their sort of own game plan of stay true to the board and be best available and take best available? And do you think that you was the strategy the right strategy? Did they execute their strategy? Did they have a vision and then go do it, in your opinion?
I do believe they executed their strategy. I think they did what they set out to do, which was draft 8 to 10 players that they like. Was it the right strategy? We won't know for 3 years. Like, we know this about the NFL draft. We all understand that the best laid plans of mice and men, et cetera, et cetera. I think that when you look at the day 2 picks kind of isolated from the rest of it, that's when you start to think, hey, what were they doing? What was this whole plan? You look at day 1 and day 3, 2 very good showings. Cam Ward, you can't really quibble with. You can, and we did for 4 months. But team with the number 1 pick drafting the best quarterback on the board, the pretty standard response to what happens in the NFL draft. And then day 3, going out and getting a lot of playmakers, a lot of guys who I think could develop into savvy contributors at some point. I've told a lot of people that my summation of this draft is the Titans drafted a lot of players who will be beneficial when the team is good, but I don't know that they drafted players who are going to make the team good. So you still need that next year's draft. You still need that 1 or 2 free agent classes. You still need to maximize while Cam is on that rookie contract. And next year and the year after that is when you build the roster that's going to transform everything. But right now, with the exception of I'm still not fully sold on the Oladejo pick, and I still don't necessarily get the Marcus Harris pick. But other than those 2, the other 7 picks, I see the vision.
Well, and even with Harris, I think drafting a corner was something that I was saying for weeks is definitely going to happen. I think they needed an extra body there. So again, and a lot of the names that we really liked, Noah Williams went off the board really early. You look at even Zoff Frazier went off the board really early. There's a lot of guys that went off the board much earlier than the Titans were clearly looking at drafting the position. So I even understand that one. I do think Femi Oladejo kind of paints the entire class to some degree.
Sure.
I think there's plenty to like about the guy. Captain of the team, like athletic, very young in his stage. But I think that's the right way to put it. I think they drafted a bunch of guys that will develop into good players in varying levels of contribution, right? Like, Oladejo, and I do think Winston's the one difference here. If he is fully healthy, I think he's a starting player for the team this year.
Yeah.
I don't know how many games in that is. Woods or Hooker. Hooker gets hurt a lot. Woods is sort of a stopgap. So I would guess that Winston is good enough to be a long-term starting piece and make them good the way Cam Ward is going to make them good. But if the strategy options were trade back and rebuild the roster or take Cam Ward, the obvious response to the second strategy is that you're not going to rebuild the roster if you don't trade back and get a bunch of picks. They did their best by sort of like, I'm going to say like finagling their late round picks to all be sort of more valuable than two sevens. Like they kind of finagled. You get something for Ernest Jones, you get something like DeAndre. I think they had enough value back there, and they found some good value with Gunnar Helm and with Ayo Manor, and I think Mullins is a really good player. I would love a GM, though, to your point. I'd love a GM to step to the podium and be like, look, we're trying a new draft strategy. We're only going to draft 1 or 2 players that we don't like. Like, you're like, the strategy was to draft 8 or 10 players that we like. I think someone should go the other way, sort of like a coach on recruiting on signing day and just being like, look, we didn't get any of the guys we wanted. We just got 18 second choices. Like, I would love a coach or a GM to do that.
So speaking of just hearing a coach and GM come out and say some stuff, I went back through the press conference transcript from Monday when we talked to Brinker and Borgonzi. You want me to list off some words that were never used?
In that entire press conference?
In the entire press conference.
Okay.
Fixed, filled, plugged, holes, addressed, strengths, weaknesses, improved, hype. We are talking, they did not give themselves any opportunity to regret what they said. Like, we spent
I wonder where they got that idea.
We spent years parsing through the minute details of these press conferences, and then we had a 28-minute press conference with these guys, and at no point, the only time they used the phrases "got better" were describing like Chimray DK over his 5 years of college. They did not make any sweeping declarations, and I frankly admire that ability to just be like, yeah, we're not gonna say the thing that the last guy said. We're not gonna give anybody ammunition. We're not gonna describe this draft as anything but character guys.
We may not look. We have no idea if this new regime is going to be good at what they do. but they are clearly good at learning from other people's mistakes, which is there is like before the draft. I don't think I've ever been in a press conference like the one that happened 2 days before the first round, where they just stood up there and they were like, nope, total consensus. We're not trading number 1 pick. We love Cam Ward, basically. The last sentence is inferred. But like it's just one of those, like they, again, very clearly a hat tip or direct hat tip towards the debate about final say that was just floating around in the ether for years. And then, of course, I agree, like no expectation setting, no raising the bar, no answering of questions on the roster, I mean. And I do wonder, that's the strategy that I think is most curious. I think if you look at, even Oladejo was a position of need, so you understand the strategy, right? Like this, I think you can look at this and go, it's kind of exactly what we expected from a strategic standpoint, which is get your value at tight end and running back and corner late, try to get a starting defensive player or two, maybe a little bit earlier. Safety was a little earlier than I think we expected, but I do think safety was clearly on the board, and I think Winston just happened to be there, and they told us he was a top high second-round pick on their board if he's fully healthy. And I do think he's one of the best safeties in the draft. Like I want to make clear on that. And take your franchise quarterback at number 1. So I think everything they did, 3 pass catchers, an offensive line, I mean, it's literally how I mock the Titans. It's not the same players.
Yeah.
But it's how I mock the Titans strategically. So I can't come back after the fact and say, I don't understand. I do think I think it's interesting that they are leaning so heavily into culture, leadership development, captains, Titans way. You're going to be able to predict who the Titans are going to pick. And I think all those guys fit that, especially got, Mullings and Ayumanner and like those DK just sort of fit that description to a T. I think when you're rebuilding the culture the way John Robinson did sort of in year 1 with going to get guys like Rashad Johnson and Ben Jones and Rashard Matthews, guys that are sort of similar as free agents, guys that are just sort of like they're not great, but they're going to be good and they're going to be professional. I think that's a good way to start a rebuild. Mm-hmm. Is it the way you finish the rebuild? Is it the reason you're great? Is it the reason that you're a championship caliber team other than Cam Ward, of course? I don't know. What did you make of? Did they lean too heavily on culture and fit and leadership and maturity and in a draft class that they clearly are going to? It's going to be about development, not immediate impact. Did they go too heavy into that? Can you go too heavily into that side of this and not just take like the badass athlete out in space?
I don't want to talk myself into a corner here because like I am a huge
Geek
proponent.
Corner, even
I am a huge proponent of do the thing that makes you. Like I don't think follow the trend just to follow the trend, follow the consensus to follow consensus. Like I fundamentally believe that the best teams do the thing that is best for them. But when you look at what those things tend to be, when you look at Baltimore and Philadelphia and the teams that we always say are best at drafting,
they take risks.
They take risks on talents that you always ask, how is that guy still on the board?
Yeah.
They don't necessarily, I'll frame it this way. The Titans had, as a result of trades, 152, 82, 103, 120, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I wouldn't have started drafting the high character, high on our board guys until 120. You have those first 4 picks in the first 103. That's where I'm just taking dudes. And I'm not sitting here saying, oh, they should have taken Mike Green or they should have taken Isaiah Bond or these like premium talents who fell because like you don't want really against your philosophy guys. But if the entire community felt one way about a player and the Titans outsmarted the community on every single pick, and I'm not saying that was the case. Io Manor was somebody who should have gone a lot earlier by the consensus.
Gunnar Helm was a value.
Gunnar Helm, Jackson Slater. I think some of these guys went way later than expected. But Oladejo and Winston in particular are 2 guys where you're talking, those are premium picks where you slightly went against consensus. Oladejo because of consensus and Winston because of injury. I don't know. I'm
how would you? So I understand what you're saying, because
Yeah.
I do think upside and pure talent eventually beats character in the NFL. It just does. Now, if you've got two guys of equal talent,
sure.
and do you want the captain and the culture guy of course you do, obviously. For example, at 52, you had Harris, Besh, Williams, Bryant, and Noel all go very soon after that. I think the question is, how do you feel about this draft class if you've got Jalen Noel at 52, and maybe you come back and get an edge at 82, and then you go a safety at 103, which is the same three positions, right? Yeah. But in a different order. I don't know. I think at 35, the problem is I think you're right to look at 35 and say that's where you could have taken a bunch of upside. Like, you had a bunch of names on the board, and Ursary, Arroyo, Collins, obviously Burden is my guy, JTT, Azaraku, Emanwari. Those guys are all. Terrence Ferguson went, the guy that I love, way earlier than expected, which I was proud to see. There's a lot of talent at 35.
Yeah.
There was a drop off in talent to 52.
Oh, sure.
Now you could go receiver at 52 and then come back and still take Winston and then go edge at 103 and just switch your 103 and your 52. Does that make the team better right away? Maybe it does. But it doesn't solve your edge, but there's a chance you haven't solved your edge anyway.
Yeah. So. And when you take the real long view of all of this, I think we all understand what the Titans are probably going to need in the top 10 if they're picking again there next year. Like, we understand that rebuilds take time. Brinker and Borgonzi have been very clear about this, that rebuilds take time. So the Titans did not address all of their needs, and that is normal and that is regular. But yeah, I mean, if you flip the order, even if you go completely out of character and took Emanwari at 35, which is what happened. That's what the Seattle Seahawks did.
Yeah.
You're probably sitting there like, oh, well, that's a high value starter that the Titans. I'm not going to parse this because draft value means so much, but like the Titans, when talking about how much they valued Kevin Winston, said we had him as an early second round grade just behind those first two guys that went when the second guy went with that 35 pick.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like what they're saying is they valued getting Winston and Oladejo over just Emanwari, which I agree with.
Yeah, no problems.
But that's what we have to talk about when we're talking about draft board valuation, because you're sitting there saying, oh, you said you think that Kevin Winston was worth an early second round pick. And in the mid to late second round, you took Oladejo. So that means if you're just drafting by top of the board value, you had Oladejo ahead of Kevin Winston, which means intuitively you also thought of him as a early second round pick or late first round pick. And based on these grades, good job. If you got three players that you graded as top 50 talents in 82 picks, that's awesome. They just have to be that.
Yeah.
They just have to be that.
And I do think Winston will be. I think Oladejo can be, but I think it's going to take some time. And again, if you're going to ultimately, what I find interesting is that those guys were both captains while going through with sort of not glaring holes on their resume, but just sort of bullet points. Mm-hmm. Switched from inside linebacker to outside linebacker for just half a season or 2/3 of a season for Oladejo, and Winston, of course, with the ACL. So like, I think there's tremendous amount of respect from the teammates about both of those guys, and so I think there's clearly an MO there with those two. I think Winston is ready to play today, and I think Oladejo is going to take time. And I think there's a lot of these guys that are going to take some time. I do think Io Manor can play right away. I think Gunnar Helm can play right away, but I don't think they can do more. Like, I think Helm is just going to do what he does. Like, he is not an inline blocker.
Yeah.
He is a large slot receiver, and I think that could be something the team desperately needs. He's very athletic in space. He's got a big catch radius. I think the receiving core, as I said on Monday, I think the receiving core is better. I think the tight end group is better. I think the running backs are better. And I think the offensive line through free agency should be, fingers crossed, hand on burner, better. All of that is good around Cam Ward. All that's good. But did you solve your edge? And here's what I'm gonna put a stake in the ground on May 1st, 2025. Anthony Hill out of Texas.
2026.
2020. No, it's May 1st, 2025.
Oh, okay.
I'm putting a stake in the ground. It's not the Simmons kid, right? The Simmons kid was a freshman last year at Texas. I think he's going to be a superstar. But you look at the two Clemson guys, Peter Woods Like I'm already doing early 2026 mock draft stuff here. The two Clemson guys, you got Peter Woods and TJ Parker are both going to be potential edge players. You got the Falk kid out of Auburn, who's going to be a potential top 10 pick at edge. Anthony Hill out of Texas as well. And then, there's another Penn State guy in there too. So like, it's not we don't know who those guys are yet, but there's already some. And by the way, there's a lot of mocks out there with Tennessee picking first, which is fascinating to me. So next year they're going to trade down. So, no pressure, Cam. So again, there's going to be edge players available. There's going to be a handful of them. Clemson, Auburn, Texas. Take a look at those teams. Penn State this year coming up. You're going to want to watch and scout those players.
I would guess particularly watch Clemson because they've got like 4 first-round picks on that defense.
Yeah.
Just as a general premise, watch them because Cade Klubnik's also probably going to be a first-round pick, and they might be a fun team to watch. But especially that defensive front.
Klubnik is mocked by many as the number 1 pick to the Titans after trading out to somebody else. Because I do think Klubnik, other than Arch, I think Klubnik is going to be the best quarterback in the draft next year. I
saw somebody ranking yesterday, and this delighted me. QB1 Mendoza out of Indiana.
No, he's a good. I saw that Fernando Mendoza. He's a Cal transfer.
Nate Tice had that, and I was like, "Oh hell yeah, that'd be fun as hell. That'd be incredible."
I just pulled up the consensus mock big board just for fun.
Yeah,
it's got Arch 1, Drew Aller 2, TJ Parker, who's the guy I've already mentioned, projected to go to the Titans. Again, keep an eye on those Clemson Tigers. We know Caden Proctor and Caleb Downs are going to be really good players, both Alabama signees originally. Caleb, of course, very highly paid safety for Ohio State. Might be the best player in college football, honestly. Caleb
Very
Downs.
good. Very good.
Nussmeier, Sellers, Klubnik, Peter Woods. You got an offensive lineman out of Miami, Anthony Hill, Falk, Bain, Fano, McCoy out of Tennessee, who's got to recover. They have Nico at number 16, which is hilarious.
Very funny. The one that's going to be he either goes first or he goes back to college player of the year is Sellers.
Sellers, yeah.
Like Sellers is just,
I agree with that.
We will see. He's either going to be the number 1 pick in the draft or we're not talking about him in 7 months.
He's either Cam Ward and Anthony Richardson or not.
Yeah.
Like there's no middle ground there because he's very similar player size and athleticism and experience. Right.
But look,
now.
I had something go up, and we don't have to belabor this point, but I had something go up on the Tennessean today, if y'all want to check it out, about the thing Cam Ward has the most in common with successful rookie quarterbacks of the last 10 years. Okay. And it is reps. It is throwing the football a lot of times in college. And if you look at Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels, Justin Herbert threw the ball a ton. Dak Prescott threw the ball a ton. Yeah. Like the guys who historically threw the ball a bunch in college are the ones that are having the easiest transitions to the pros. Look at last year with Nix and Jaden Daniels and how successful they and their teams were compared to Drake May and Caleb Williams, who had more conventional 2-year starter careers in college. It's a lot easier to make that transition, and that is all to set up and say, Cade Klubnik has played a ton of college football. And so that is the player who, if Bo Nix continues to have success, and Jaden Daniels, and if Cam Ward establishes himself, Klubnik.
Aller's not different either. This is going to be his 3rd full season starting at Penn State. Here, just as a total, because we haven't done a lot of college football on this show, and I kind of missed that.
It's been a minute,
As a total aside, as I'm starting to get into like my spring State of the Unions and sort of, at Athlon Sports, we're putting the magazine together as we speak right now. We got a deadline coming up in a couple of weeks. Clemson and Penn State are the 2 teams that I keep looking at because they're the 2 that have the fewest players drafted this year relative to their recruiting rankings because they paid to bring all of them back. They had the most retention basically of any of the best teams. What do they also have in common? Outside of Arch Manning, they might have the 2 best quarterbacks in college football. And both of them have played a lot of ball. Yeah. And both of them have been through adversity. Cade Klubnik took a lot of criticism for his first couple of years at Clemson. Aller has not had as much because he's been very protective of the football, but he doesn't have the upside. We saw Klubnik's upside in the second half of the season last year and into the playoff. His numbers off the charts last year. Yeah. So it's gonna be Texas. Texas had a lot of players drafted. I think 12. So they're in a little different situation. They're sort of in reload mode. But Penn State and Clemson are just 2 really fascinating teams that haven't really. James Franklin has never been able to get over the hump, and Clemson is sort of it's almost like the new version of college football doesn't suit Dabo Swinney and Clemson, but we're going to see if he can do it in the new version, I guess. And this is a team that's built kind of in the old way, so it's very interesting. So anyway,
you know what else is one last college football note? You know what's really interesting looking at these 2026 way too early mocks? You know, two teams that are not frequently appearing on these are Georgia and Alabama. Like Caden Proctor's there. There's sometimes CJ Allen from Georgia makes it. I might be missing some obvious players.
I've got Christian Miller from Georgia at 26, LT Overton, pass rusher from Alabama at 27. But yeah, that's the only first round picks that I see on here.
Yeah, this is going to be a strange year where I'm guessing preseason number 1 is Texas.
So
like it's going to be, there is a lot of good. I don't know who's great right now.
I'll give you, because again, if you look at Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, Notre Dame, some of the best teams and I'm probably forgetting somebody in there, in the top 6 or 7, all of them replace everybody, including quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of unknown there. And while Texas is replacing a quarterback, their quarterback wasn't as good, and they have Arch coming back. So again, not to say that Ohio State doesn't have, Julian Sain is a 5-star number 1 guy, and Gunnar Stockton played in the playoffs, so like he's got some experience. We're doing the magazine right now. The debate is really Texas or Penn State, and if you're putting Penn State there, you're doing it almost intentionally to put pressure on James Franklin. Because if it was coached by anybody else, you would not be hesitating to put Penn State at number 1.
But sure, in a classic way.
Yeah.
Penn State, first round running back, first round quarterback. Like in a classic way, they got a lot of talent. They got a lot of, like, the players that touch the ball the most are very good.
And they finally went out and got some receivers this offseason. My point is, but here's what I think is going to happen, not for our magazine, because I think our magazine is probably going to have, I'm not trying to give away Texas and Penn State here, but for you football show listeners, here you go. What I think is interesting is I think Ohio State will get the AP vote for number 1.
Sure.
And I think Texas will be 2, and I think Penn State 3. I just think Ohio State's losing too much because they got to play Texas and Penn State in the season next year. So number 1 versus number 2, I could see the TV executives going, "Hey AP, hey Associated Press, could you guys put Texas and Ohio State in a 1 and 2, please?" Because that'll be the first game of the regular season for both of them in a what will assuredly be one of the most watched football programs of the entire calendar year in 2025. So, all right, Sinkers Beverages, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, great barbecue, great beverages. You got a weekend coming up. You're going to want to hang out at Shotgun Willie's, get a great meal there. You can go from 11 to 3 Wednesday through Sunday, and a great supporter of good local businesses like 440 Sports and the Our Kids Foundation. Food was great. Everybody ate very well over the weekend. Sinkers Beverages, 4-time liquor store of the year. Here's the deal. Sign up for the in-crowd, because when you sign up for the in-crowd, you get access to all kinds of behind the scenes and ahead of the curve kind of stuff. So you're going to get access to allocations if you like the brown water. You'll get deals. You'll get wine pairings. You'll get all kinds of stuff that for your weekend needs. So make sure you sign up for the in-crowd. And 40 years of serving the community, 50 years of serving the Hendersonville community with their sister store, Bluegrass Beverages. So if you're up in that part of the country or county, excuse me, make sure you go check out Bluegrass Beverages. Okay, I want to talk AFC South here. Mm-hmm. And I want to kind of roll through each of these teams. First of all, do you have an opinion on who you feel did the best job of the 3 other teams? And maybe I'm ahead of myself already. Is the order of operations the same as it ended last year, in your opinion, going into the draft? Was it Houston best team, Colts number 2, Jags 3, Titans 4, or did you feel like that had flipped it all during free agency based on some of the moves all the teams have made?
Oh, so are you asking power ranking just the drafts or power ranking the full rosters right now?
Yeah, the full rosters first. I'm kind of going out of order here. So let's start with the full rosters and just sort of, I'm not holding you to this. Your perception, like my perception of the South without diving too deep into it, is Texans are the best team before the draft. Colts are number 2. Jags and Titans are 3 and 4 in some capacity.
I think that if one of these teams finishes with the worst record in football, it will be the Colts.
Really?
Now, that's not saying I think any of them are going to, but just purely on one of these teams is still starting Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones of it all, the premium of the quarterback,
Riley Leonard.
Yeah. that Colts roster I've been saying this since I was in middle school. It's one of my oldest football takes. When you have a roster that is good at everything, great at nothing, that doesn't mean you're going to be 500. That means you're either going to win 14 games or 3 games. Like this Colts roster is so down the line average. Just like everything about it, I'm like, yeah, good player. They got a solid starter there. And I'm not seeing the over the top star power just about anywhere. It's very similar to a certain team that you and your daughters enjoy watching together, in that I don't know if there are any Pro Bowlers on the Green Bay Packers, and that scares me. I don't know if that's a good thing, that every position is a B to B plus.
Well, when you have Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur, it helps.
Yeah.
That's the difference, right?
The Colts are built in a very similar way, where I look up and down that roster, I'm like, Michael Pittman's the 18th best wide receiver one
Quiddy
in
Pay.
the league. Quiddy Pay's good. Julian Blackman's a good player.
Right.
Like they've got a lot
of
they got good players. Nobody that's going to make me say, "Oh, and they're going to win because of him."
Well, Taylor's pretty good. So
yeah, they're not going to win because of him, unless they're against the Titans and just run for 370 yards. I think that team is my boomer bust pick for the year. If you have something you want to hold me to, I would say Las Vegas is the worst team in football. That is the team I'm stamping my flag as. I do not like that roster. But the Colts, big bust potential this year.
And that was before the draft.
That's
with the draft.
With and before.
So did your opinion change of the South with the draft at all?
A little bit, because I actually really like the Colts draft.
What's funny about what you're saying about the Colts draft is, so I think they do have that in the tight end now. I think they have one of the best tight ends in the world. I just think he's not top 5, but like he's top 10. But I think JTT is the epitome of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like JTT is a good professional football player who's going to be a value add to their defensive line.
I think Jalen Travis in the 4th round is a player I've always liked.
I really like DJ Giddens actually too.
Giddens is a solid pick. Wally is another cult of they just keep drafting guys who I feel like are going to be 83 overall in Madden.
Okay, so then there's a lot of questions here. It's what did we think of the division before the draft? What did we think of the draft? And what do we think after the draft? And it seems like I like the Texans before the draft. I think the Texans did the best draft, and I think the Texans are the best team coming out of the draft. I don't think that's rocket science, right?
Sure.
You agree with all of that or no?
Other than clearly thinking they had the best draft, I agree. I think that they had a draft on par with what the Colts and Titans did. Okay. I'm not seeing, other than the 2 receivers, like top shelf. Oh, I forgot about Jalen Smith.
I really like the Texans draft.
Yeah. I don't think that they found, with the exception of Ursary, who's going to start by virtue of they just need an offensive tackle more than anything else. I don't think they found year 1 major starters just about anywhere. And that's because they loaded up where they're already loaded. They've got a lot of receivers, and you go out and you get Higgins and Knoll. They've got really, really good cornerbacks, and they go out and get Jalen Smith. Like, that is not make your team better because of who's playing. That is make your team stronger moves. And that's a luxury you can have when you are at the top of the division.
So you like the Titans draft number 1 potentially, or the Colts, or the Texans? Which one are you at?
All 3 are pretty on par for me. I would probably say Colts, Texans, Titans if I am pressed to it, but they're all very, very close.
It kind of all ties to Cam Ward. So I like the Texans, Titans as the best 2, Colts 3, but we'll get to Jacksonville. We all agree no one knows what they're doing. So again, I think Texans begin at 1, probably close to being the best draft. We can argue that, and then clearly the best team coming out of the draft. So here's what I want to do. I want to go into sort of what was the big thing? What was the one takeaway you had from each of these 3 draft classes? You can it can go any direction. So I'll give you an example here. You kind of already alluded to what you feel like they did as it pertains to the Texans, but my thought looking at this list of players is that they are attacking the passing game pretty substantially here. Yeah. They are doing things to help their quarterback throw the football more, which is Higgins and Knoll. By the way, they also have Xavier Hutchinson. That's 3 really great Iowa State receivers on the team. Ursery is a great blocker. Woody Marks, who can run between the tackles at like 215, 220 pounds, is also a phenomenal pass catcher. So he is there as an additional piece for the passing game. They get a tight end in round 7 who can do a little bit of everything. And then on their first 2 defensive picks are Jalen Smith and Jalen Reed, 2 guys I really liked for the Titans potentially later on in the draft. They went after and attacked the passing game, both to help CJ Stroud and to help the defense stop opposing quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So it's clear that they looked at their roster, and they've got a bunch of pass rushers. They don't need help there, right? They clearly looked at their roster and they said, how do we help CJ and how do we stop your quarterback? And that seems like a pretty sound strategy when you're already a pretty good football team.
Sure. And you look at this team, Kamari Lassiter was sneakily probably top 10 rookie in the NFL last year.
Yeah.
And Derek Stingley, not so sneakily, my opinion, for best cornerback in the NFL.
He will be,
I know Pat Surtain is genuinely the reigning NFL Defensive Player of the Year. There is an argument that Stingley was better than him last year.
Agreed.
So you have those 2 guys. You add Jalen Smith potentially as a nickel, potentially as just a rotational piece. That is a lot to like in that cornerback room. And then is Jalen Petrie their number 1 safety? I'm trying to remember who else they've got.
He was last year.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember who else they've got. But you like that secondary, pair it with that absolute behemoth pass rush they've got. This is a really good roster. Yep. It just comes down to, will the plays they call be better than last year? If so, this team can contend.
The irony of like how much love Slowick was getting the year before.
Yeah.
But again, sophomore regression for a quarterback, sophomore video, the league catches up to you really quickly. But I think it's clear to see the vision for what they're doing. We already feel pretty good now. The offensive line is maybe where you talk about them, but it doesn't mean that they don't have good players. They have really good players. So they just kind of did after Ursery. They didn't really look at it, which is okay. But man, Higgins and Knoll to go with what they've already got to add Marks to that. Like CJ Stroud has a copious amount of weapons. It's kind of disgusting.
And let's also remember what we said about this draft from the jump about where the offensive linemen will go, where the receivers will go. The Texans did a great job of drafting to where the talent was in those rounds, as well as anybody. They picked the receivers when we said receivers are going to go. They picked their tackle when we said tackles are going to go. They found the players right before the runs started. And that was good planning on Casario's part.
Yep. All right, Colts. You've already kind of alluded to some of the players in the draft class, but what did you make of the Colts draft class, and what is sort of the overarching takeaway from their strategy?
I think that they did the thing that, again, the Colts tend to do, which is, that thing Brinker said of you're going to be able to tell who's a Titan before they pick them? The Colts have that tell of Tyler Warren to the Colts might have been the most popular mock draft location of anyone beyond Cam Ward to the Titans. Like everybody just kind of saw that happening. Yeah. And I tried to come up with 100 ways to not predict it, but it just happened. It is exactly what everybody thought. It's the thing the Colts needed, so they picked it. JTT to the Colts. They had to get a replacement for Odeyingbo. I don't know if he is the same profile of player as Odeyingbo, but he is a warm body replacement who, pairing him with the DeForest Buckners of the world and just like the talent they have on that defense, he plays the way the Colts defenders tend to play. They favor big, powerful run stoppers who can get after the quarterback at some point. That
they
makes
hold
sense.
Hold the point of attack, disciplined approach to the running game and the passing game. Like again, so the thing I walked away with was outside of Warren, because I think Warren is an A+ player in the draft. I think they drafted a bunch of B+ guys at positions of need. And I do think they made their roster better. To your point, how much better? I have no idea. No clue. But I think they went out and attacked similarly to the Titans, honestly. They saw positions of need and they went and added B to B+ players of value at each of those spots. No bad picks, no elite picks, but all guys that are going to contribute but maybe not start.
Yeah.
Like, again, I think JTT is the poster child of the class, which is these are the guys that are going to be on the roster and probably have an NFL career, but we don't have any real clue at how good they're going to be. But they could be pretty good. So
I will say Jalen Travis, though, is the most how did this guy not end up with the Titans based on what the Titans did this year guy in the class. He's the one that started at Princeton. Am I remembering right?
They could have taken him at 120 when they took Gunnar Helm. They could have taken it, but
just like the ultimate high character. I think he's one of the guys that won the like award for most likable dude in college football type thing. Like that one would have made sense for the Titans plan. You want to talk about the Jaguars?
Let's get to the Jaguars here. So I have a positive one and I have a negative one. I'll go with the positive first, which is they better have a really convincing and extravagant plan for Travis Hunter, because they are all in on Travis Hunter being not quite the savior of the franchise, but like the thing that makes them good again. And that's hard to say about a receiver, hard to say about a corner, maybe not hard to say about a guy who is going to play both ways potentially. And so my thought on this, when I see this, like I think Wyatt Milam is an interesting pick. They doubled up on a lot of positions that I think are strange. They doubled up on linebacker, they doubled up on corner, they doubled up on running back. They went secondary with their first 2 picks, if you're counting Travis Hunter as a corner. So to me, to trade up the way they did, give up what they did with a roster that still has holes, and then to not really have a coherent strategy after that, in my opinion, it tells me that they are all in on whatever plan they have in place for Travis Hunter, and that it probably means a lot of Travis Hunter.
So one of my favorite things that I know about the NFL, because I'm a weird sicko who's done this kind of research.
Keep going.
In, I believe, 29 out of 32 NFL markets, and I could be off because I haven't looked at this data in a year or two, but I believe in 29 out of 32 NFL markets, the NFL team drafts players out of the most local powerhouse college at a lower rate than the rest of the NFL does. And so what I mean by that is the Saints draft players from LSU at a lower percentage than the rest of the league. The Falcons draft players out of UGA at a lower percentage than the rest of the league.
Welcome Jalen Walker.
The Rams draft USC players at a lower percentage. The Titans draft Vols, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The Jaguars have always been the anomaly, that the Jaguars always tend to draft University of Florida players and Florida State players at a higher percentage and higher in the draft than the average NFL team does. And what that has always told me about the Jaguars is that they draft, no matter who's in charge, based on, we need the fans on board. We're drafting the local kid. We're drafting a good story. We are drafting the person that's going to rally the troops. We're going and signing Tim Tebow as a UDFA.
Do you think that has anything to do with the local scouts being more able to see the players more often?
It would if any other team drafted that way. But like no other team is drafting that way.
Could the argument be that their home territory is largely better than everybody else's home territory?
If the first 2 examples I gave were not the Saints and Falcons, I would totally be on board with you. And if the Buccaneers drafted like this, or the Dolphins drafted like this, nobody drafts like this. Which is all to say, Travis Hunter, even if he is not the hometown kid, is the most indicative of this draft strategy of anybody. Which is, you drafted him, A, because he's a great player, but B, you can sell this to a fan base that they're still trying to win over. Jacksonville, despite having the most land area of any NFL franchise to like pull fans from, gigantic, still fighting an uphill battle of who are Jaguars fans. Travis Hunter is a pick that can make people Jaguars fans. People in Jacksonville and people all across the country.
About 12 to 15% are from Europe. So
sure.
Also
tough. Who was the best-selling jersey out of draft weekend? It was Travis Hunter. Yeah. When was the last time the Jaguars had the best-selling anything? Like, this draft purely boils down to the Jaguars got the best player in the draft, and more than that, they got the most marketable player in the draft. And so we can talk about the rest of their draft. I like Tootin out of...
It's so early, though.
It was really early.
I like the player, too, but...
I like that player. Ransaw's okay. Like, they've got some players that I
like Milam's pick, but like, it just...
I got some players I like.
Kaiser, okay, all right.
It's a nonsensical draft, except for the fact that they just got a player.
Running backs?
they got they got a player who is going to be a face of the NFL for the next 10 years. And Jacksonville needs that pretty desperately.
Well, until they trade him to the Rams, because the last time they had the most marketable player at his position, it was probably Jalen Ramsey, and Jalen Ramsey got traded to the Rams. I'm now thinking about like holes in your argument about the Titans, because it's like they've drafted a shit ton of Alabama players, and for about 15 years, Nashville was an Alabama market. Just for the record. There were more script A's in the town than there were power T's for a while. That's because all the Tennessee fans were in hiding while Alabama dominated college football. So I do want to point that out. So, and a bunch of players from the area in Middle Tennessee went to Alabama as well. So just
not disputing it. I'm just saying that
Chance Warmack, come on down.
The Vols are the power program in the area. There is not a professional sports team in Alabama.
Alabama Crimson Tide. Tuscaloosa is not that much further from Nashville than Knoxville is. So
I understand how maps and geography and whatnot.
Are you sure?
I do know.
Did you live in Nashville from 2009 to 2018?
No, I lived all across the SEC. I did not live in Nashville at that point.
Sadly, this was an Alabama market. Now, all those script A's had been in hiding the previous decade for sure. The Mike Shula, Mike DeBose era, and then why am I drawing a blank? Yeah, it was Shula before Saban, right?
It was.
Yeah, Mike Price also was in there.
Too many mics.
Okay, so look, I can't make any sense of the rest of this because again, you have two running backs on the roster who are already better than the two you just drafted. I don't fully understand that. They have a couple of their front seven is in pretty decent shape, so I guess I understand going secondary there for a couple of picks early, but I agree. Like, there's just not a lot of coherent strategy to make anything of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, here's what's interesting about the power rankings in the division. I think Houston's clearly one. I think you could make an argument for any of the three to be 2, 3, or 4. Right. I think if you're asking me which team has the most upside if things go right, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but if Trevor Lawrence is fully healthy with some of the pieces they've got around him on offense that could be developing, Thomas, etc., I think you could look at that offense and say that could be the best. That could be the number 2 offense in the division pretty easily.
Yeah, the question's coaching, right? Like, we just have no idea what Liam Cohen and his staff are going to look like. It's a very similar situation to what the Titans had last year with Brian Callahan and company. I think Cohen hired some. Let me look at their coordinators. I can't remember off the top of my head.
I don't know much about the staff now that I think about it.
Jacksonville Jaguars coaching staff. Let's see what the old Google machine says.
I think my instincts would be Houston 1, Jacksonville 2, Titans, Colts 3, Titans 4, I think would be my instinct.
But I see that as an instinct. They hired Udinsky. They hired the 27-year-old offensive coordinator from Minnesota that everybody was interviewing, Grant Udinsky.
Always works.
And defensive coordinator Anthony Campanile from Green Bay.
Okay.
So again, I think they did the exact same thing the Titans did, going out and hiring two very young coaches to pair with a young coach. We saw how that worked, so we'll see if the Jaguars do it differently.
Well, the difference is they've got franchise quarterback if he stays healthy.
Got Trevor
if he stays healthy. So we'll see. Okay, Tennessee, and what you got coming up for the good folks on Tennessee and Tennessean.com. Pay for good journalism.
Yeah, if you haven't checked out my Cam Ward story from earlier in this week, thought it turned out really well. Was pretty proud of that one. So go back and check. I interviewed a bunch of people about when was the moment you realized that he had won you over. And there's a lot of fun anecdotes about how Cam Ward wins people over. You can also check out something I wrote this morning that falls in the category of how the heck did my bosses let me publish that, where it is the 9 randomest fun facts I could think of. Those things that I usually do on Twitter for an audience of why did you think of this? I put it on the actual Tennessean website. So if you want to know how many players in Titans draft history used all 5 vowels in their name, the way that Oluwafemi Oladejo does, I've got data on that. If you want to know how many Titans have shared last names with former U.S. vice presidents, I've got data on that. If you want to know how many Titans players have shared names with U.S. state capitals, I've got all of it. I've got the dumbest stuff in the world. It is all live on the website. Go check it out.
Of the 7 draft picks that have used all 5 vowels in their names, only 2 of them were technically Titans.
Correct. 3.
Laurel Murchison and Jeremiah Patasi.
Yeah, and
So,
now
there you go.
Oladejo.
Yeah.
2 mentions to Houston Antwine. 2 different times I
How
have
did
to
you-
mention 1960s draft
This-
pick Houston Antwine.
Does Pro Football Reference allow you to search based on vowels?
I control F'd the letter U and looked at every single player with a U in their name because I knew that was the least common vowel.
Started there.
And so I counted there. There's a lot of
kids, dude.
There's a lot of fun
right.
dumps. This was during the workday. This was just a thing I did while I was at the office. The kids wouldn't be there.
This is why you're doing what you're doing. This is why I appreciate you. As you know, as I spend, I do the same thing every year with the starting rosters for the Super Bowl and the draft, where I look at them all as recruits and I just look every single player up as a recruit. And then I go back and pair it up to the ratios and the fractions of the number of 3s and 2s and 5s and 4-star players in the draft class. And it's just something that I do. And I don't know.
If you want me to bring this back, something I used to do when I was in high school is the first day of training camp in the NFL, I would make a 64-person bracket of the 64 names that bring me the most joy. And I have told him this. I have since grown to know somebody who won one of the brackets. T-Bob Hebert won one of the brackets one year. And so he knows that he has won one of these brackets. If you want to do a football show, 64 names that spark joy, I will put the bracket together in July.
Honestly, same bracket might be like 64 best, most entertaining and most likable college football media members.
Yeah.
T-Bob might be a 1 seed in both of them.
Yeah, just
so
fantastic human.
Yeah, what a great dude. What a great dude. All right. Tennessean.com, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, Sinkers Beverages, pay for good journalism, pay for good barbecue, and pay for good bourbon. Sinkers Beverages, 4-time liquor store of the year and proud sponsor of our draft party that has now raised over $6,000 in 3 years of doing this event. They are the sort of the driving force behind all of it. And all the money goes to the Our Kids Foundation. If you want to get involved with Our Kids for other reasons and just go help a great organization, make sure you check them out as well. Please go peruse the website, learn about the issue that they focus on, taking care of kids in the market. So please do all of that. For Nick, I am Braden. Thanks for listening. Thanks for dealing with us being a little early today and being recorded. So I do appreciate all of that. The Titans, Callahan, they're all talking on Thursday. We'll have reaction for you from PK, from Nick, from Hot Read, and, of course, on Monday as well. Otherwise, have a great weekend, everybody. He is Nick. I am Braden. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time.